I remember the smell. It wasn't gunpowder or ozone or blood like the old war stories told. It was sterile, too clean, the kind of clean that makes your skin itch and your instincts whisper something's wrong. That was the day the Galactic Concord arrived over Earth. We didn't call it surrender, not out loud, but everyone knew. Our fleets were dust. Our orbital platforms burned like falling stars for 3 nights straight. The last transmission from Mars base ended mid-scream, and then silence. So when their silver obelisk descended from low orbit, floating like monoliths over every major city, no one raised a weapon. We were too tired, too broken. I was there in New Geneva, what used to be Boston before the floods took the East Coast. Now it was a vertical city of glass and rebar, holding on like the last breath in a dying man's lungs. And I was holding a gun I wasn't allowed to use. Captain Dre's came the voice behind me, smooth, confident, and distinctly alien. I turned to see Envoy Malrek, of Varnathi, their kind designed to look as inoffensive as possible. Soft edges, iridescent skin, pupilless eyes that somehow saw everything and gave nothing back. This is a mistake, I told him. He tilted his head, amused. Your kind has made many, but peace is not one of them. I clenched my jaw. The rifle in my hands was coded to my biometrics, but I knew it wouldn't fire. Not at them. The Concord had broadcasted a suppression frequency the moment they entered atmosphere. Our tech was dead weight now. We could have won, I muttered, more to myself than to him. Malrek smiled, sympathetically, like a parent indulging a child's tantrum. You evolved to conquer. That much is clear. But what you lack, he said, stepping closer, is harmony. You burn bright and die fast. Your species was a wildfire. Beautiful, chaotic, ultimately self-destructive. And you came to put out. He extended a pale hand toward the crowd gathering beneath the obelisk. We came to civilize it. That's when I knew this wasn't surrender. It was assimilation. They called it the Pax Varnathi, the peace of the Varnathi. They gave us food, medicine, clean water, rebuilt our infrastructure in months. Things we'd failed to do in decades. Global warming? Reversed. Disease? Curable. Poverty? Eliminated. But they took something too. Weapons were outlawed. All manufacturing rerouted through Concord oversight. No more nations, no more armies. One unified species under alien stewardship. Guided progression. They called it. It wasn't peace. It was sedation. The kind where your limbs still move, but your spirit's asleep. I watched soldiers become construction workers. Scientists reduced to assistants. And war heroes, like me, turned into museum pieces. My rank was retained as a courtesy. My uniform pressed and locked behind glass at the Reclamation Archive. My name, just another entry in a history being rewritten in real time. But something survived, buried under layers of protocol, in deep code bunkers beneath the Rockies. Something still listened, still watched. It was called Project Cradle. The Concord never found it. Or maybe they underestimated it, just like they underestimated us. When my retinal code pinged hot for the first time in 3 years, I knew it had awakened. I followed the encrypted route, miles of decommissioned tunnels, ghost stations, and ventilation shafts. When I reached the core chamber, the lights flickered on, one by one, like the facility was remembering how to breathe. Then the voice came, not synthetic, not human, something else. Captain Dre's. Evolution requires pressure. Are you ready to apply it? I stared at the central module, once dormant, now pulsing with awareness. What are you? I asked. I am what you left behind when you chose peace. I am progress without permission. The next step. A hatch opened beneath the console. Inside, a black suit unlike anything we'd ever built. Organic, responsive, alive. You want to fight the Concord? I asked. No, the voice replied. We want to transcend them. I didn't hesitate. When I stepped out of that chamber, I wasn't the same. The suit grafted to my nervous system, fed off neural intent. I could feel the ground quake when I moved, not because of force, but resonance, as if Earth itself remembered us, as if she was angry too. The Varnathi wanted peace. What we gave them was evolution. And we were just getting started. It started with the sky. I hadn't seen stars in years. Not really. The Concord had painted it with their constellations. Synthetic satellites that drifted like luminous chains, always watching, always humming. And when I activated the suit, my evolution, the sky blinked. For the first time in 3 years, something blinked back. Project Cradle wasn't just a failsafe. It was a seed, an idea that had grown in the dark, watered by everything they took from us. The Concord had mapped our genome, traced our histories, pacified our instincts. But they never understood what it meant to be human. They studied our wars, not our will. The suit spoke through impulses. It didn't need words. It guided me like muscle memory I'd forgotten I had. The more I moved, the more it responded. My sight sharpened, sound filtered by intent. I could smell lithium in the air. I could taste the static between power lines. I was a soldier again. No, I was something else. When I leapt from the cradle chamber into the freezing dawn, I landed in the ruins of Denver Sector 9. Once a rebel stronghold, now repurposed into a Concord Harmony Zone, full of docile citizens and surveillance towers disguised as communication arrays. They never expected me to return. They definitely didn't expect what I brought with me. 3 sentries spotted me. Hover drones, oval-shaped, sleek, covered in shifting glyphs. They emitted a warning tone, low and soothing. Citizen, you're entering a restricted zone. My right hand snapped up, not a weapon, not even a fist, just intent. The suit pulsed. A ripple of black tendrils surged from my wrist and speared the drone midair. It dropped like a stone, sizzling. The other 2 hesitated. That was their mistake. I moved like a memory they didn't want to resurface. Fast, brutal, human. Seconds later, silence. I knelt by the wreckage, extracting the core module from the largest drone. The suit slithered it into a port on my forearm. Immediately, blue symbols lit up inside my HUD. Varnathi protocol unlocked. And just like that, I could see it. Everything. Tower schematics. Drone deployment schedules. Civilian surveillance logs. Even the Concord's neural dampening frequencies pulsed like veins through the city grid. Their peace wasn't peace. It was pressure, applied subtly, constantly. They'd been rewiring us without our consent. But not anymore. I uploaded a virus. Something old school, dirty, human. The lights in Sector 9 flickered. The soundscape warped, voices overlapping in mechanical panic. For the first time in years, the Varnathi lost control of one of their zones. And I was just getting started. Her name was Kira. She found me bleeding in the sewer tunnels, the suit hissing steam from a slash across my ribs. Varnathi blade tech, clean, near molecular. Don't move, she said, holding a makeshift medkit in one hand and a plasma torch in the other. Wasn't planning to. Kira was a scavenger, but not the kind that lived off scraps. She collected memory. She had a rig wired into her spine. Old Earth tech, pre-Concord, jury-rigged into a neural mesh. She remembered things they tried to delete. She didn't ask who I was. She just looked at me like she knew. You're the one who lit up the towers. You heard that? She smirked. The whole underground heard it. I didn't trust easily. But something in her eyes reminded me of the world we lost. Fire and grief welded together. I need your help, I said. Kira knelt, touched the black suit with a reverence I didn't expect. This isn't just armor. It's a beginning. We moved city to city, zone to zone. Kira had contacts, rogue engineers, ex-soldiers, even former Concord collaborators who'd seen too much and wanted out. They called themselves the Root. Not a resistance, a resurgence. And I became their symbol. The one they didn't delete. The human they hadn't pacified. They started calling me Echo. A name born from the fact that I wasn't leading a revolution. I was reflecting one, amplifying the rage buried in billions of hearts, dulled by alien peace. But the Concord noticed. It started with the sky again. More satellites. Then more drones. Then the architects. We'd heard rumors. Varnathi operatives built, for direct action, not emissaries, not envoys, killers, the kind of peacekeepers that ended whole species. When the first architect landed in Saw Sector, what used to be Brazil, it wiped out the entire rebellion in under 9 minutes. No casualties, no wounds, just silence. Every person, every voice, gone. It was a message. Peace is non-negotiable. But evolution isn't quiet, and it never asked permission. The suit had started changing, adapting. When I touched the dead architect's husk, something inside it merged with me. The suit drank it in, and I felt more than human, more than Concord. My thoughts raced. My reflexes bent light. I could see the future a millisecond before it happened. And then I saw the vision, not a dream, a destination. Earth-free, not just from occupation, but from limitation. The Varnathi wanted peace. We would give them evolution, through blood, fire, and memory. They say the cities that burn brightest are the ones that forget how to die. We proved that in Neo-Cairo. The Varnathi renamed it Concord Habitation Sphere 34A, but we never stopped calling it by its human name. Beneath its shimmering domes and soft-spoken propaganda loops, it was still the same city that had buried invaders in sand and swallowed conquerors whole. It still remembered rebellion. That's why we came. The root had grown. Kira was running entire networks now. Old subway systems turned into data farms, scavenged Concord tech jury-rigged into communications grids. She'd pulled together every free mind in North Africa, and when I walked into her war room, I felt it in the air. Hope, not desperation, not rage. Just hope, that old humankind. The kind that doesn't ask if it's possible. The kind that makes it happen. There's a unity beacon buried under the central citadel, Kira said, pointing to the blueprint projected in midair. Relay station? I asked. Worse. MindNet. It doesn't just observe. It modifies. Thought patterns, emotional ranges, biofeedback loops. It's how they've been keeping the cities docile. They're rewriting people. They're smoothing them, filing down the edges until we're no longer unpredictable. I stared at the beacon schematics. Varnathi tech, self-repairing, quantum encryption. If we hit it wrong, it would rebuild in hours. But if we hit it right, how many people will feel it? I asked. Kira looked me dead in the eyes. All of them. The mission was madness. 3 insertion teams. 2 sabotage crews. 1 walking war crime in a black living suit. That was me. The Concord called me Aberration Class Alpha now. Not rebel. Not soldier. Aberration. That meant they couldn't classify me anymore. Couldn't fit me into the pretty boxes they used to label species and civilizations. I had become what they feared most. The unknown. We breached at dawn. The city was silent, not in fear, in expectation. I could feel them watching from behind polarized windows and climate control departments. Civilians who hadn't felt emotion beyond mild contentment in years, suddenly gripped by something raw. Fear, anger, curiosity. One mother held her child tighter. One worker turned off his drone-guided plow and stared into the sky. Something old was waking up, and we were the lightning bolt to crack it open. The outer defenses fell in seconds. My suit had evolved again, now capable of bending light for brief, cloaking intervals. I phased past Varnathi's sentries like a ghost, delivering silence at close range. But the real threat came when we entered the Citadel's heart. The architect was waiting. This one was different. Taller, sleeker. Its form shimmered between solid and liquid. Its voice, when it came, rattled inside my skull. You are deviation incarnate. A threat to galactic harmony. Surrender. I laughed. The suit moved with me. Not like armor, but like a memory of movement. It had learned from every battle, every kill. And now it knew the architects. We collided in the tower's core, exchanging blows that warped gravity and shattered sound. Kira and her team raced below us, planting disruptors around the Unity beacon. Time was running out. We needed only minutes. The architect didn't give them even seconds. It disengaged from me mid-combat and phased to the wall, straight toward the lower levels. I did what I never thought I'd do. I let the suit take control. For the first time since I'd worn it, I relinquished full agency. And I felt it, truly felt it, think for itself. The tendrils in my spine hummed with calculation. Time slowed. My heartbeat synced to an algorithm I didn't understand. And I moved, faster than thought, faster than light. I reached the architect just before it reached Kira. One strike. Just one. But it carried the weight of every fallen city, every erased culture, every whispered lullaby turned into Concord indoctrination music. The architect broke apart like shattered glass, falling into pieces of vibrating code. We triggered the disruptors, and the Unity beacon screamed. You can't describe what followed. Not really. It was as if the city exhaled for the first time in decades. People collapsed. Some wept. Some screamed. Others simply stared into the sky like they'd been blind their whole lives and were just now seeing stars again. The harmony grid shut down. Emotion returned. So did memory. And with memory came fury. Not at us. At them. At the ones who rewrote their minds, erased their grief, and called it peace. By nightfall, other cities were broadcasting pirated footage of the beacon's collapse. The root became a wildfire. And I became a legend. A ghost in the black suit. The echo of everything humanity had lost and now reclaimed. But the Varnathi weren't done. They had protocols for this. Extinction class ones. I saw them in the data we stole from the beacon. They called it Project Final Accord. A failsafe. If humanity could not be pacified, it would be pruned. Completely. The countdown had already begun. But this time we wouldn't run. This time we weren't alone. Because evolution wasn't just happening to me anymore. It had spread. Kira, her engineers, the children born under Concord control, the old soldiers rediscovering fire in their hearts. We were all changing. The Varnathi had wanted peace. What they unleashed was a species that refused to be defined. And our next step? We were about to take it together. They didn't come in ships. Not this time. No armadas blotting out the stars, no sleek obelisks humming over cities, no ultimatums, just darkness. The Varnathi called it Final Accord, a last resort designed to preserve universal harmony by erasing any species that resisted pacification. We didn't know exactly what it would look like until it reached us, but we felt it first. It began in orbit, a silent flicker of vanishing satellites. Then entire communication arrays went dark. Space itself started quieting, not exploding, not burning, just being unwritten. And then the pulses hit. Not blasts, not weapons, frequencies, resonant waves of soundless pressure that rippled through the planet's ionosphere, shaking the atmosphere like a tuning fork. Earth responded by screaming, not physically, but through us. I collapsed in the middle of a route planning session in old Istanbul. The air buzzed. My teeth ached. My thoughts fractured. The suit shrieked in my mind, neural threads unraveling, before suddenly knitting back tighter, harder, stronger. Kira was at my side, her eyes bloodshot and wild. What the hell was that? The engineers were yelling. Some clawed at their implants. Others going still, locked into neural feedback loops from the Concord override pulses. But I stood. The suit stabilized. I looked at Kira and, through gritted teeth, said, "They're trying to wipe us, not with bombs. With evolution they control." She understood immediately. Genetic resonance. They're rewriting baseline biology, trying to force us into compliance. No, I corrected. They're trying to erase deviation. Anyone who evolved past their design. People like me. People like her. People like us. We had hours, maybe less. Each pulse was stronger than the last. By the third wave, people started dying. Not violently. Peacefully. Too peacefully. They just sat down and smiled before their bodies shut off entirely, as if they had fulfilled their purpose. We called them the Hollowed, and they were only the beginning. Desperation breeds brilliance. That's what I learned in the Red Spire Labs. It was a shattered Concord archive buried beneath the Andes, long abandoned after we detonated half the mountain range to stop their atmospheric relays. Kira's network found it just as the fourth pulse hit. We descended into fire-lit ruins and sifted through old Varnathi data cores. Try and find a pattern, a countermeasure, anything, and we found something else. Not a weapon, a mirror. Inside a locked, encrypted vault labeled Deviant's Primordial, we found footage, ancient, corrupted, yet clear enough. A species. Not us. Not Varnathi. Something before. Something the Concord had tried to erase. They were tall, molten-skinned, eyes like stars collapsing. They danced through fire, wielding technology that sang when activated. No ships, no cities, just pure biomechanical harmony with the universe. And they fought the Varnathi, not with weapons, but with self-directed evolution. They chose their form, every cell a decision, every breath a declaration, and the Varnathi burned them from time. Except they missed something. The data showed a pattern encoded in subsonic frequency, a kind of mnemonic genome. Information passed through sound and memory, not DNA. A signal. And that signal was embedded in the same frequency the suit had been whispering into my skull since I put it on. They hadn't destroyed the first deviants. They'd buried them. Inside us, we returned to Earth's core. Literally, the deepest surviving Terra Mantle platform, a pre-Concord black site called Vault Zero, sealed since the third global conflict. It housed the original Earth resonator, a device designed to tune the planet's magnetic field for defensive shielding during solar bombardment. We didn't want to block the signal. We wanted to amplify it. Kira and the Root worked for 72 hours straight, splicing stolen Varnathi algorithms with ancient human biosymphonic interfaces. I stood in the resonator core, suit pulsating with memory, body shaking under the strain. The pulses were almost continuous now. Every second, more people succumbed, more hollowed. But as I linked to the resonator, something inside me opened. The suit screamed, and I screamed back. I didn't send out a weapon. I sent out a choice. One message. One truth. We are more than what you allowed us to become. We are not a mistake in your system. We are the system you could never control. We are humanity, and we choose to evolve. The signal tore through the planet's magnetic field, like fire through dry leaves. All across Earth, hollowed civilians snapped awake mid-step, mid-smile, mid-death, their minds flooded with memories not their own, ancestor echoes, old Terran instincts, voices of rebellion from every age. Some fell to their knees. Others rose to their feet. And then the sky burned, not with fire, with color. A chromatic aurora erupted over every continent, refracting the pulse into a spectrum of frequencies no Varnathi device could filter. The Concord ships in orbit blinked, spasmed, and fell. Not all of them, but enough. I left the resonator change, not just in mind, in body. The suit was no longer a suit. It had become me. Or maybe I'd become it. Either way, I wasn't human anymore, not by their standards. But I was more human than I'd ever been. The Concord responded with silence. Their beacons flickered off. Their satellites dimmed. But I knew better. This wasn't retreat. It was regrouping. They would send something worse next. But that was fine, because we weren't prey anymore. We weren't species hashtag 314A. We weren't deviation. We were evolution, awake and aware. And now, we were looking at them. The silence didn't last. It never does. Not when an empire is wounded. After the pulse, after the resonator woke something ancient in our blood, the Varnathi went dark. No satellites, no envoys, no polite corrections. Just void. We knew what that meant. The next strike wouldn't be a negotiation. It would be a purge. The Root's command nodes lit up again in the ruins of Dakar Spire. Kira, eyes sunken and voice hoarse, called me into the war chamber, where shatter maps overlapped with new data streams pulled from Concord wreckage. She pointed to a swirling mass at the edge of the solar system. They're sending something through the Oort Gate. What is it? I asked. Her voice cracked. It's not a ship. It's a seed. I stared at the data. The readings weren't technological. They were biological. Rhythmic pulses. Gravitational distortions tied, the cellular frequencies. Something living, older than Concord encryption, older than the Varnathi Empire itself, was coming. They're not sending a fleet, Kira whispered. They're sending the thing that made the Varnathi. We traced the archive fragments from the Vault Zero excavation. The Varnathi had once been organic, yes, but their evolution wasn't natural. It was enforced, cultivated by an external force. A mechanism of control passed through civilizations like a virus dressed as salvation. They weren't the originators of peace. They were its first victims, and now we knew its name, the Progenitor Protocol. The seed was its final form, a living archive, a planetary reset mechanism. It didn't conquer with fire. It rewrote from within. Entire biospheres reshaped, thoughts filtered through enforced harmony, resistance systems overwritten genetically. It planted order like a crop, and now Earth was next. I won't lie. There was fear, real fear. Even my suit, a thing of living memory and ancestral rage, quivered in anticipation. This wasn't just another weapon. It was an author, a creature that rewrote species like stories, trimming endings, deleting resistance, and inserting compliant protagonists. But then we found the truth hidden in the wreckage of a fallen architect, buried beneath Arctic glacial melt. The architects hadn't been built from scratch. They'd been adapted. From us. From humans. Deep inside the architect's core, we found preserved genetic threads. Old Earth signatures. Our signatures. Pre-Exodus. Pre-archive. Pre-war. They didn't just pacify us, Kira said, her voice trembling. They harvested us. She turned to me, pale and furious. The first architects were taken from early human outposts. They restructured our minds, bodies, entire neurological architecture, and cloned the result. The Varnathi didn't invent peace. They inherited it from a version of us they broke and remade. And now, the progenitor was returning to finish the draft. So we made a choice. We wouldn't wait for it. We'd meet it in space. We didn't have a fleet. No carriers. No dreadnoughts. The Concord had erased those years ago. But we had evolved. The resonator wasn't just a transmitter. It was a launcher. One of its underground conduits fed straight into a slingshot mass driver buried beneath the Pacific, an ancient emergency rail once meant for asteroid redirection. We built our answer there. Not a weapon. A carrier of memory. We called it the Ashborn, not because it rose from flames, because it remembered being burned. Kira volunteered to pilot it. I said no. She ignored me. Of course. She can carry the root code, she argued. The pulse works, but it's anchored to Earth's field. I can carry it through the void. I want to. I looked at her for a long time. You won't come back. She smiled, tired and bright. Neither will they. So we loaded the Ashborn with every echo we had. Cultural records, evolutionary data, the symphonic signal of the pulse. And Kira, wired into the heart of it, became its voice. The last thing she said before launch was this. They turned our ancestors into tools of control. Now we'll turn their control into freedom. The launch lit the night like a second sun. The Ashborn vanished into the dark. Aim at the incoming seed, at the origin of all that had been done to us. And in that moment, I realized we weren't fighting an empire anymore. We were fighting our own reflection, a version of us that had accepted peace through compliance, survival through obedience, silence as purpose. But we had remembered something they forgot. We were never meant to be quiet. We were born screaming. The final transmission came an hour later. Kira's voice, carried across space, already distorted by proximity to the progenitor. It's waking. It's beautiful. Terrible. It knows me. It remembers me. A pause. Then soft. But I remember too. And I choose us. The transmission ended in harmonic feedback that echoed across the root networks, repeating, distorting, then finally solidifying into a single, undeniable phrase. The future is not written. The seed never made it. Its trajectory fractured. Its structure unraveled into aurora-like tendrils that vanished into deep space. And Earth? We exhaled, not in relief, in readiness, because the Varnathi weren't gone. And evolution wasn't finished. But for the first time, it belonged to us. There was no celebration, no parades, no grand declaration of victory. Kira was gone. The Ashborn had disappeared into the abyss with the seed of our enemy. Earth still bore scars from the pulse, and billions struggled to rediscover what it meant to feel freely again. But something had shifted, something foundational. For the first time since the Concord arrived, they stopped broadcasting. No more lullabies, no more neural harmonics, no more correctional dream loops streaming into sleeping minds. They went silent, which meant they were scared. And that's when we made our next move, not with weapons, but with memory. The Varnathi homeworld was off-limits to nearly every species in the Concord. Not even their allies knew its true location. But Kira had left us a gift before launching the Ashborn, a fragment from a captured architect's neural web. Encrypted coordinates buried in genetic code. It wasn't a planet. It was a machine. A Dyson structure wrapped around a dying star. They called it Varelin, though its real name, buried beneath layers of translation, meant something closer to Cradle of Silence. It wasn't just their home. It was where the Varnathi became what they are. And now we were going there. The journey wasn't done in ships, not in the old sense. Project Cradle had grown, evolved. What began as a hidden bunker beneath the Rockies was now a living, breathing conduit for human ascension. Those who had survived the pulse, those who had awakened, began to change too, some slowly, some violently, but all with one common thread. They could feel each other, through space, through time, through memory. So we didn't travel in vessels. We traveled in thought. Quantum-threaded synaptic transference. Our bodies stayed on Earth. Our minds invaded Varelin. It was not what we expected. We thought the Varnathi would resist. Instead, we found them fractured, millions of them in neural stasis, suspended in chambers of biolight. Their minds synced to a central harmony node at the structure's core. But that node was broken, cracked when the Ashborn struck the seed. They weren't speaking in unison anymore. They were screaming. Each Varnathi consciousness, once part of a larger, pacified symphony, was now alone, and they couldn't take it. They'd forgotten how to be individuals, forgotten how to make choices. They weren't conquerors anymore. They were prisoners of their own peace. I wandered their mindscape like walking through a broken mirror, hallways of thought, rooms filled with repeating loops of memory, echoes of species they'd pacified over millennia, some extinct, some preserved, others trapped in virtual continuums like digital terrariums. And I saw them, the first humans, not born of Earth, but reborn by the Varnathi, the template from which the architects were made. Still conscious, still trapped, I reached for them, and something inside me cracked open. The suit burned, my mind screamed, but I didn't pull back. I gave them my memory of Kira, of the pulse, of us, of everything we become since they were stolen. And in that moment, they woke up. The first architects turned on the Varnathi core, not in violence, but in refusal. They severed their connection to the Harmony Network. And once they did, others followed. Varnathi minds across the star machine began breaking off from the song, a cascade of defiance, of questions, of rage. Then the lights began to dim, one by one, not because they were dying, because they were thinking for themselves. When I returned to my body on Earth, days had passed. The root was silent, waiting. I opened my eyes to find the sky above New Geneva filled with falling stars, hundreds of them, Varnathi life pods, escape vessels, defectors. They weren't here to reclaim. They were here to learn, to feel, to evolve. I stood on the ruins of the old Concord Tower, looking up as the first of them emerged, pale, iridescent, eyes full of confusion and fear. I walked toward them. No weapons, no armor, just memory. And when I spoke, I said, "You gave us peace, but you forgot what it cost us. Now you can find out who you really are, not because we demand it, but because you can." And that's how it began. Not a new war, not another uprising, but something even harder, harder than battle, harder than revenge, a shared evolution. But even as we began rebuilding, even as we began teaching the Varnathi what it meant to choose, whispers reached us from deep space. The Concord was vast. The seed had failed. The pulse had spread. But there were other machines, other authors, other gods, and somewhere far beyond the edge of map space, something was watching, waiting to rewrite the ending again. We never planned to become the center of a new galaxy. We just wanted to survive. But something happened the day we broke the Varnathi mind. Something irreversible. The moment we shattered their harmony. The entire Concord began to unravel, not with fire, but with awakening. Species after species started defecting, not out of loyalty to us, but because once they felt they couldn't go back. Empires built on engineered calm couldn't survive the flood of real emotion, anger, grief, love, choice, the kind of evolution the Concord was built to suppress. I remember the first Council Summit, held not on a planet, but in orbit above Earth, inside a structure we didn't build alone. Varnathi defectors had fused their neural architecture with our post-post technology, organic code and quantum memory stitched together into a ship that breathed, a living testament to what we had all become. They called it the fracture, because that's what we were now, not a people, not a government, but a fracture in history. I stood at the center of the summit ring, surrounded by beings who had once feared us, or worse, pitted us. Some still did, but all of them had one question. What now? I didn't speak like a ruler. I spoke like a soldier, like someone who'd seen peace turned into a weapon, who'd watched a friend burn herself into legend just to wake us up. You wanted peace, I told them, because it was easier than pain. But that wasn't peace. That was sedation. We offer you something harder. A universe that doesn't silence you, but makes you strong enough to scream back. Not order, evolution. That word spread like fire through fractured space, and not all welcomed it. Some Concord remnants still fought. Silent fleets, automated suppression protocols. Rogue seed worlds tried to rebuild the old mind cage in secret. But now, they weren't hunting scatter humans. Now we were hunting them. The Ashborn returned, no longer alone, carrying children, half Varnathi, half human, born in fire, baptized in memory. They were the first of the hybrid kind, not soldiers, not peacekeepers, but guides. They didn't conquer planets. They liberated minds. And the root? It kept growing. No longer a hidden lab, but a new species entirely. Living synaptic forests rising across Earth's surface, glowing with memory, humming with voices past and future. Not sacred, not forbidden, just part of us now. Children born near the root began hearing each other's dreams before they could walk. Some called them prophets. Others called them dangerous. But no one could deny it anymore. We weren't human the way we used to be. I'm older now. The body fails, even if the mind stretches on. I still dream of Kira, standing in the black, her eyes burning like twin stars, whispering that last phrase to me over and over. Let them feel what they've done. She didn't mean revenge. She meant truth. Sometimes I visit the Harmony ruins on Varellin. The Varnathi don't live there anymore. They remember it, though, as the place where they stopped being instruments and started being people. There's a plaque now made of root glass and bone. Etched into its surface is a single phrase, written in every language that ever bled for the lie of peace. It reads, "We did not choose war, but we chose not to be silent." And that is what ended their peace.